Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am Dr. James Smith Jr., and welcome to another edition of the Dr. James Show. Looking forward to it, as always, what promises to be another amazing, and I'm biased, amazing show. But before we take off, bring in my co-pilot, Shannon Peck. Shannon, it's Tuesday. It's Tuesday.
You know, I always say it, TGIT, this is my Friday. Thank God it's Tuesday.
How has your week been? These shows
great.
just come up like that, but I'm sure you got a lot going on.
Always. But you know what? Nothing stands in the way of my Dr. James show, no matter what's going on. Got to get fed, Dr. James.
Gotta get fed. Are you ready? You ready for today?
I'm ready for today. We've had some well-known guests, but today is ultra special. We're flipping the script, Dr. James. We're putting our guests on the other side of the mic, on the other side of the camera. It's going to be exciting. Ladies and gentlemen, viewers, listeners, don't forget, write your questions in the chat room, make your comments, ask your question, do all of those things. Don't let this hour go by with having an opportunity to ask all of those things, and just knowledge is power. All those things you want to know. We're scooping. Dr. James, I'm handing over the mic to you because I want to get this thing started, because I'm super excited, very excited today.
Well, let's do this. I've watched our guest from afar. I've followed his career. Back when he was in college, I knew about him. So I'm looking forward to him sharing his journey, his ups, his downs, his highs, his lows. And he's just an amazing, amazing man. So we'll jump into it right now. Thank you. Our guest for today, Lou Holder, Emmy Award-winning sports personality, public speaker, motivational speaker, and educator. Look at that smile. Look at that smile. That's who's coming out. He looks just like the picture. Welcome, Lou Holder, to the Dr. James Show. Welcome.
Hello, Dr. James. How are you?
I'm good now, man. I'm good now. We got you. Your schedule is busy getting you for an hour. Woo! But we did it. Thank you for making the time.
No problem. It's my pleasure.
Now, you're probably in the midst of all this March Madness right now, right?
Yeah, it's the most wonderful time of the year if you are a sports fan, because magic happens, and not just for a couple of teams, over 60 teams all over the country, and anything can happen. It's already been magical in the area that I live right now. Just some of the storylines that have happened already. So it's great. It's wonderful. And I really like the March, April, because golf is soon after that with the Masters, traditionally the Masters, and it's just the start of that area into the spring is just really magical in the sports world, because so much can happen.
As you are in the midst of this madness right now, what's making it different? How has the pandemic impacted? We'll get to sports in general, but how is it impacting March Madness?
So it's the way that it's covered now, and it's the way that it's, how should I say, broadcast, and the way that it's covered. So obviously we've seen just the difference of no fans being in the arenas the entire season, just like the NBA. And just like hockey, you see a lot more signage now, because they're covering up seats with signs and stuff like that, and people's faces and stick figures and what have you. But the way we cover the team is also different. There's no more, and I actually think that's one of the things that will never go back to the way it was. I don't think the sportscasters are going to be allowed into locker rooms anymore. I think that they're just going to bring these athletes to a mic, like I'm speaking to you, and it's going to be done either on Zoom or what have you. It's just too much of a risk to have all those people in that space not knowing if they're vaccinated or what have you. So from the Super Bowl to the NBA championship to whenever, you are not going to see for a long, long time. And I don't even know if that will ever happen again. You are not going to see reporters so close to athletes
Wow.
interviewing them like we've seen in the past. We recently lost icon in the business, Irv Cross.
I was going to ask you about Irv Cross. Yeah.
One of the reasons why I wanted to get into sports broadcasting was watching this smooth brother do his thing for CBS. But the way he would interview people, and people after that have inspired me. I don't think that's going to happen, not as frequently as it used to. So that's one of the main things I can see happening. It's interesting that a lot of people are still kind of confused about March Madness and think that there's going to be games going on in different parts of the country. That's not happening. Everybody's flying into a bubble situation, and they're going to be, you cannot, I think the women are going to be in San Antonio and the men are going to be in Indianapolis, and you have to have a certain, negative testing or whatever just to get into the bubble.
Yeah.
And then after that, everything's going to happen right there. So that's one thing I've had to educate people on. And people have to know that there are these pods where you play 2 games in one city, and then go on to the regionals. And no, everything is going to be right there at these sites. So that's historic. That's never happened before.
No.
At least not since I've been covering sports. But they took a page out of the NBA book, and they're trying to do the best that they can. Already there's been Gino Auriemma, the head coach of the
UConn
Huskies.
Yeah.
He has to be at home for 10 days. So he's going to miss the first 2 games of the tournament because he has this test. So they're taking it very seriously. And not even one of the icons of the game is going to be able to get into the bubble with a negative test. So they're very serious about they can't get this wrong because there's too many things that could go wrong.
Sure.
That they just don't want to take chances. So I think that's the main thing, Dr. James, is that you're going to see a lot different of the presentation and the way it's covered. I think that's going to be the main thing that people see.
I think I heard that the NCAA said for the teams, you have to have at least 5 healthy players. That's powerful. That's powerful. Lou, you mentioned Irv Cross, former NFL commentator, former Philadelphia Eagle defensive back, him playing a role in how you got here. But why don't you take us back? When you were in school, had you always aspired to be a TV personality, sports journalist, Emmy Award winning? When did this whole I want to do sports idea, when did it start?
So it's a long story. I'll try to condense it because there's so many tentacles to it. But I've always wanted to be in sports. I went to Rutgers University on a soccer scholarship. And I always
go.
Yeah. And I was, I didn't know I was going to be a trailblazer when I got there. I was the only African American on the team my freshman year. Ended up having more players, but it was just, sports sometimes doesn't see color, and that's great about it. They don't see color. We just want to know, can you play? And growing up in New Jersey, we had the fiercest competition on every part of the state. So that
was D1, right? Rutgers was D1 soccer, right?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So Bob Riasso was able somehow to keep a lot of these players at home. And so it was a great run. Went to 2 Final Fours, went to a championship game.
2 Final Fours.
Woo. Final Fours, yeah. And I'm still in therapy because UCLA has my ring. Yeah. But near the end of my career, I realized that I don't know if that was before MLS, before Major League Soccer, and I wasn't really interested in going to play overseas. It just, I could hold my own, but I just really wasn't into all of that to go overseas and play in some remote city way away from home and not even sure where it was going to go. So I decided that I was going to start switching to other ends of sports. So I would watch people like Irv Cross and people on television. I was like, okay, I like sports. let's just keep that in my back pocket. Keep that in my back pocket. But after I went into the corporate America for a while, doing communications, I said, you know what? I can't do this anymore. I got to get around sports. So I went to Temple University and got my master's degree in sports management from Temple University.
Mm-hmm.
And that opened up my eyes to everything, because they had their own television program and television station called Temple Update. And I credit that program with changing my life. I got my master's degree in sports management, and I'll be ever grateful for that. But there was also that niche I wanted to get around sports and around broadcasting, and that helped me. So that's kind of how my career took off, doing stuff as a grad student at Temple University, doing sports.
Your pictures on the wall, man, one of those Hall of Fame. We're like, I know him. He's Lou. There's Lou.
Yeah.
Gallery of success.
Yeah. And it was great. Sad, but also great, when we lost John Chaney.
Icon.
Who to me is one of the real life Black Panthers. I think we have a picture of you and John Chaney. Yeah, we'll put it up there as you continue to talk about him. Please go ahead. Yeah. So he now, mind you, again, I grew up idolizing John Chaney and John Thompson, the head coach of
Georgetown. We have one of John Thompson too.
Right. Those are the individuals that young African-American males looked up to, because not only their command on the court, but what they did for their athletes and all athletes off the court, with Prop 48 and being very, very vocal about how athletes were treated.
There's the picture, you and John Thompson.
Right. So those two individuals were like larger than life characters growing up, and used to watch them all the time on the sidelines and just idolize them. So now I'm starting my broadcasting career, and at Temple Update, it was great that they gave us these press passes where we could go and stand right alongside the ABC, NBC, CBS affiliates right there in Philly. But obviously, I mean, Temple University basketball was a story in Philadelphia.
Yes, it was. Absolutely.
And to start my broadcasting career, interviewing John Chaney, and John Chaney treating me, a student, just as much respect as he would treat all the other broadcasters. That's an amazing, when I look back at it, that's amazing moment for me. And I'll always be grateful, because he could easily said, look at this reporter. I mean, come on now.
That's not Chaney. That's not John Chaney.
So Chaney always had the students in mind, and not just the students that he coached, but the students that he interacted with. So
one of my greatest memories growing up was attending the John Chaney Sunny Hill summer camp. So I was a little youngster when I met him for the first time, and he was as cantankerous then as he was throughout his career. So for you to have the opportunity to get up and close and personal with, like you said, two trailblazers, two pioneers, two people who were so authentic about giving back.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huge.
And it was real. It wasn't one of those things that was just on game days. It was all the time. Those 5 a.m. practices were legendary.
Yes.
And he let us roll right in there.
Really? Okay.
Right in there with and now look back, one of my co-anchors and one of my broadcast partners at that time is now going on to ESPN, Kevin Nagandi.
Yes, Temple grad too. Yes.
Right. So we all sit there and we marvel at, wow, we got a chance to interview and to interact with an icon as one of our first experiences in broadcasting. It's like you where do you go from there? So it was just an amazing experience. Temple University, the Philadelphia area, it molded me. It molded me in so many ways. But as far as being a sports broadcaster and how to learn the right ways to do it, I started at Temple University, and I'll forever be grateful.
Well, you know, I have 2 degrees from Temple, so that's fam. That's fam. Speaking of fam, Shannon, something tells me that chat room is blowing up a little bit.
We've got a comment over here. Irv Cross, the only person and player able to bring down Jim Brown one-on-one. We do have a question here for you, Lou. Do you see yourself working in the Philadelphia market?
So there was a time where that I really desired to get back home, and I still do at some point. But the dynamics of the business have changed so much that, you know, who knows what will happen if that opportunity did present itself. Absolutely, absolutely, I'd want to come home. My parents and my sisters and my family is there, but I'm in the Washington D.C. area now, not far, and it's all I-95 love. So it's close enough that I can get to my parents, and it's just venture to say there's a lot going on in this city on an everyday basis. So the energy is here, but Philadelphia is home, and Philadelphia is an acquired taste. You either love it or you hate it, you know, and that's what I tell people. You either are with Philly or you're not, and there's no in between.
That's right.
But I learned so much there. A lot of good friends still there on the air. Yuki Washington, Jeff Skaversky, John Clark. The list goes on and on and on of people that I know that are still doing the right thing and broadcasting the right way in the Philadelphia area. That absolutely, if I had a chance to come back and join those people, I definitely would.
We're putting that out in the universe. We're gonna get you back home. Get you back home. Shannon, any more questions in the chat room?
Yeah. So quick question. As a child, were you naturally inquisitive? I know you love sports and you always wanted to be in sports, but did you find yourself even as a young kid asking questions naturally?
Asking questions, yes, but knowing the history of sports was more me. I was a big historian, studying a lot, just understanding the history of different sports. You know, in the Philadelphia area, you know, understanding the Broad Street Bullies and Bobby Clark and Bernie Perron, and understanding all that.
Let's go Flyers.
Right? You know, and it served me well, because you have to know a lot about the teams that you're covering and not just the ones that are there. Right. And the one thing I love about Philly that is unmistakable is that everybody knows everything about all the sports. Right. There were more Black people that knew about hockey in Philadelphia than I have seen in any other city that I have gone to. Right. I remember when the Flyers used to wear those black pants, the long black pants.
Yes.
You know, and just, you know, I went to school with Reggie Leach's kid. Me and my sisters went to Bobby Clark's day camp. You know, Brian Propp and Tim Kerr, they all lived down the street from us in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. So it was like nobody saw color. We just saw sports. And that's one thing that, and the people who excel in Philly love sports and love being in Philadelphia. And that's one thing that has not changed. So asking questions, yes, to an extent, but understanding history, that was more of something as a little child that I always found myself now looking back, wow, I really wanted to know about all this stuff. And it was for a reason.
I love it. And in return, you know more about the person and the whole.
Right.
So you're a whole, he's a global perspective person, Dr. James, is what I'm hearing.
Thank you, Shan. Thank you. Lou, you talked about history, being a historian. I know you had the opportunity to interview Chadwick Boseman. Before you tell us what that was about, because that was history making, considering the Jackie Robinson role he played, we're going to show a little clip from your interview. And then I want you to talk about what that was like. How did it feel talking about Jackie Robinson, the great Chadwick? Let's show the video clip and then get your take on what that was like.
it's not often that you get to play an iconic role. I'm thinking Will Smith when he played Ali, and I'm thinking Denzel Washington when he played Malcolm X. But you got to play Jackie Robinson. When they asked you to do the role, what was going through your mind? Was it intimidation? I mean, it's Jackie Robinson.
I mean, at first you just celebrate that.
Yeah.
You know, you don't think about how difficult it's going to be at first. After that, it sets in how big it is. And I just tried to break it apart. You know, we had some time to work on it. You know, you go through your actor's process, and I just told myself that this is like any other role you've ever done, except, you know, it's going to mean more to everybody that watches it. And so I think, you know, for me, it was just the process of you know, me accepting the challenge and realizing that there's nothing I could do about, you know, what anybody else is going to say about it. And then, you know, accepting the fact that I owed a responsibility to his family.
Lou, couple things. What was that like? How did you prep for that? And since you are the historian, what did it feel like? Take us behind the scenes.
So first, before I do that, let me do a public service announcement, Dr. James. So this month is a National Colorectal Awareness Month. And I am just imploring so many people to go get screened, go get tested, get your oscopies, do whatever you need to do. Chadwick Boseman has got to be the biggest wake-up call for our community that it doesn't happen to people in the 50s and say he was in his 40s. You know, and to know that he was making most of these films, that iconic roles, while he was dying, and didn't say a word. And then the way he went to those kids in the hospitals, and he was an icon himself, but he was this Black Panther, this mythical character that he was playing, but all along he was becoming iconic in his own right. And it was just a wake-up call for so many people to go get screened, to go get tested, because this colorectal cancer is no respecter of person.
Absolutely.
And now we know that it's attacking younger and younger and younger people. And once you get screened and tested, you have a better chance of surviving it. So with that being said, when I interviewed Chadwick Boseman, he did not have the cancer, and he was not who he was. I mean, this was his first breakout role. He was doing other stuff, but Chadwick Boseman was making the circuit. You know, you go to these cities to promote the movie, things of that nature, but he went to Howard University. So when he came to the area, the station that I was working for at the time said that he was going to be available at a hotel room in Georgetown. And I was more in awe about the character that he was playing than he is the actor, because again, this is before Thurgood Marshall. This is before James Brown. This is before T'Challa. You know, this is before all of that. This is just a guy playing a role of an iconic figure that anybody who knows sports has a respect for Jackie Robinson. So the prep for that was more, how are you doing this knowing that this role is going to change your life? And he was so laid back, so appreciative, and he was the right person to play the role. He was the right person to play the role. And other clips from that movie just talking about how he had to tell the white extras not to cheer for him because that's not how it was back in the day. Right. And they had to retake it every time the white extras would cheer for him instead of booing. Just stuff that he had to go through in the movie. It was just fascinating, James. It was just so fascinating to hear him bring it to life and to get the green light from his widow, Rachel, to do the movie. Man, that's got the pressure that, okay, you're the person that I want to play the role, because he had said that she'd been wanting to do this movie for a while. So there's others. There's Denzel, there's Lawrence Fishburne, there's all these people out there, but they chose Chadwick Boseman, and that role catapulted his entire career.
Absolutely.
Soon after that came, Get On Up. It came Marshall, and then obviously the Black Panther soon after that.
I like at the end of the interview when you said, "What's next?" and he says,
And he knew.
"I can't
He knew.
tell you."
He knew.
That
He
Black
knew.
Panther was coming.
He knew.
Lou, in your industry, do they teach you not to be starstruck, or you just, you're talking to athletes and pros, it's just natural? How does that work?
So there is a process that you have to go through as far as just mentally in your head realizing that you're there to do a job. Every press pass I have says no autographs. I mean, I'm not there as a fan. I'm there to do a job. And there are some moments in my career where I was like, wow, I'm interviewing this person, but I'm still there doing a job. So it's more of perfecting my craft than being a fan. If there's time to be fans, and the pictures that I have been able to receive from people or co-workers that have taken it for me because I can't do it myself. They're either me working, doing my job, or after the interview is over, or if I built time with the person, they took a picture with me. I mean, that picture with John Chaney was at my college, my graduation. So there was no sports going on there. That was a person who really respected me and the job that I did while I was there. And John Chaney took a picture with me. And John Thompson, those pictures, I wasn't working at the time. John Thompson was March Madness. Yeah. John Thompson was and is March Madness.
And his towel.
And the towel. And one of the great stories already for the tournament is the fact that Patrick Ewing, the crown jewel of his Georgetown Hoya paranoia back in the day, that same Georgetown team that Villanova took down in '85.
When I got my first VCR, I got it to tape that game, my VHS, when Georgetown went down to Nova.
And to know that he now won it as a coach. On the anniversary of the day that Georgetown hired John Thompson, that's why they call it March Madness.
They won the big
Georgetown had to win that tournament to get into the big dance, and they destroyed Creighton in the Big East final. This was a 8 seed that took down a 2 seed in that tournament, and they beat them by over 20 points.
Oh, they took down a 1 seed too because they beat Villanova.
Yeah. So to do all of that, that's why they call it March Madness. So somewhere John Thompson is smiling down. He's probably cursing at somebody too. That's how John Thompson was. John Chaney too.
Yes, right. I'm gonna kill you.
They're both up in heaven. Probably expletives all over the place, but they were some lovable characters. So and again, after I did it for a while, it really didn't faze me that I was interviewing quote unquote famous people. It just was part of the job. It's part of the job.
All right. I have some meaty, go deep questions coming up. But before I go there, Shannon, bring some chat room love. What's happening in the chat room?
Folks are saying city of brotherly love. Wonderful to hear from you, Lou. You're a great guest. We also had somebody who had an opportunity to meet with Chadwick, and when he was filming 21 Bridges in Philly, such a genuinely nice guy. And so one of our folks wants to know, what does broadcasting the right way mean?
So there's a wrong way to do it, and that is when it's all about you. And some people in the industry that I'm in, they find themselves wanting to be the story, wanting to be the celebrity. We're really broadcasting is teeing other people up so their stories can be told. And you see a lot more of that in the internet world and the social media world where everybody wants to be a star. Sometimes you can be just as big of a star interviewing other people the right way. And that means listening to them, not your agenda, their agenda, having a good command of the English language, being able to present yourself well, nice attire. That's all part, and that's what I teach now to the young broadcasters that I am mentoring. That is the right way. That is the right way. That's the way I learned. That's the way Temple University schooled me. That's the way I learned from the likes of Stuart Scott and Brian Burwell and James Brown, who's one of my mentors. Everything has come up. Be yourself, but do it the right way, and don't embarrass the craft, right? There's a certain way to do it, and that is the right way. That is the right way. There's a code of ethics that the journalism field has, and in there is accuracy. That's one of the code of ethics. Another one is humanity, that you always look after the other person, even if you are going after person, to be fair. So if Shannon has a point and Dr. James has a point, to do the thing the right way is that I should be hearing from both of you to get both sides of the story, right? When you do a report and I'm only interviewing one side, that's not the right way to do broadcast journalism. I could hate one of you internally to my core, but to do the job the right way, the one I signed up to do, the craft that has given me so much, is that I have to hear both sides and let the audience, from my storytelling, let them have their own opinion on the story that I'm doing. Those are some of the nuances of quote unquote the right way.
Yeah, it's good.
Good. That's good.
So
Thank
good.
you. Thank you, Shannon. Lou, back in the 80s, I was in corporate and I started my first foray into diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the topics that would come up every single class would be the Washington Redskins. The Washington Redskins. Again, using Indians as a team name. You don't hear the Jersey Jewish guys or the Boston Black guys. You don't hear that. But you heard, up until this season, the Washington Redskins. Now they're the Washington football team. Can you talk a little bit about that, being in that market and hearing it and the reaction and perhaps even your thoughts?
Yeah, so that is the hot button topic in this area. Well, that and when the Washington Wizards were the Washington Bullets.
Yeah.
Those two names have been moved around a lot in this area. So my history with the Washington football team is that, first of all, when your team is winning, there's not as much people saying stuff as when your team is being destroyed by ownership. Okay, let me just make that clear. Okay, so when Joe Gibbs was winning Lombardi trophies, not many people were, as far as I know, growing up, not many people were had a problem with "Hail to the Redskins," "Hail victory," "Hail to the Redskins," "Fight for old DC." People were saying that every time they scored, and no one had a problem with it, right? There is, and we've had it in this market where I live, you have to do your research, getting both sides of it. There are a segment of Native Americans who view the name Redskins as a term of endearment. It was something that they were proud of. They were proud that a team had their name on it, and there was that segment. There was also the segment of people, as you said, that found it to be offensive. And if it's offensive to one person, it's offensive to too many. So it was only when money. So one thing millionaires and billionaires enjoy is more money. And when FedEx Field and Nike and the NFL started to squeeze Dan Snyder and his entities, that's when that name had to change. It's always like that. I remember when Imus in the Morning, and this is personal for me, Imus in the Morning
Imus, yeah.
called a bunch of Rutgers women's players, nappy-headed hoes.
I remember that. I
And
remember.
we were all like, what in the world? And it was only when the corporate sponsorship started to ban or pull out of his show that's when the apologies happened, and that's when things started to change, right? And the only reason why it's the Washington football team now is because FedEx Field and Pepsi and Nike started to pull that logo off of shelves and off of buildings and things of that nature. So I was one of those people that was, rooting for the team, and Doug Williams, the first Black quarterback, and I was all for that. But when you started to hear more and more people saying that's offensive to me, it was time for change. It was time for change. People had changed. Now, what I will say though is that you can't have it both ways.
Both ways.
So if Dan Snyder has to change the name of his team, then so does the Chicago Blackhawks, so does the Indians, so the Florida State Seminoles, anything that has anything to do, the Kansas City Chiefs, all of that has to be looked at now. You can't just say, well, it's a person, but no, it's all, you have a Native American symbol on your helmet, on your uniform. Let's call it what it is. If you're going to do change, then everything has to be under consideration for change. That's one thing I will say. But growing up now, as you get older, you mature and you understand the human plight of people, and more and more people were on the side of it's an offensive name, and it needs to be changed, than they were to the history of what it was.
Mentioned Atlanta Braves too, but it's been that way throughout. Even children's games, you get A's for apple, B's for ball, C's for candy, I's for Indian. The only group of people that consistently over years were an object, not people. I's for ice cream, Indian. Let's give that some thought. We have a picture of you with someone else who created some controversy a few years ago. The controversy was he decided to take a knee during the national anthem as a way of drawing attention to the behavior, the circumstances he felt, unjust circumstances he thought police afforded people of color, Black people, the brutality and thus forth. He took a knee, Colin Kaepernick. He took a knee. It looks like you guys are in the same fraternity here. So what's happening here, and your thoughts about Colin Kaepernick in the sports world taking a knee and his career being over?
Right. So obviously that's, again, the San Francisco 49ers were in Washington playing the Washington Redskins at the time. And then after the press conference, I just went up to him and mentioned that, they were from the same fraternity. And he took that picture with me. That was way before all of this stuff went down. And I am so proud of him, and so proud to be in the same brotherhood and fraternity as him, because he had to take a stand. And the thing about it is that we got the people, this country got so divided over something that it shouldn't have, because it was never about the flag. It was never about the flag. The former president made it about the flag. And it's just so ironic that whole thing that happened on January 6th at the Capitol, and flags were being used to beat people up, and that in itself, the irony of all of this was and those same police officers, one of them died, another one saved more lives. It's one thing to stereotype and have the perception that all police officers are this and all Black people are this and all white people are that. That's a dangerous way to go down, whether you're a broadcaster or not. You cannot have those stereotypes and perceptions without checking those perceptions. And I think at the time, he was making a stand for the bad cops who are not doing their oath of protecting and serving, right? There are a segment of police officers who need to be checked, who are not protecting and not serving. And that's what that knee was for. The knee was also for equality in the sport that he plays, right? The Rooney Rule, Dr. James, is a joke. The Rooney Rule is a joke. There are not enough of people of color. Now, Washington here has finally got it right. There is a Black president, there is a Black GM, there's a woman on the staff. There's things that have changed here, but nationwide, there was so many job opportunities that somebody like Eric Bieniemy, who is the offensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs, there's no way in the world why he does not have a job in one of these franchises. And then you hire Jacksonville, will hire Urban Meyer, who's never coached on an assistant level or anywhere in the NFL. He gets a job with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and Eric Bieniemy is not even, I don't know how he's not considered. So that is what Colin Kaepernick was also kneeling for. The people that play that sport want to see more diversity, not just on the field, but in the front offices as well. And that got all messed up and all lost in the flag, right? It was so much more than the flag. That was just the area, but the stance was not about, disrespecting our military and things of that nature.
Lou, how did you handle those conversations with your peers who weren't woke at that point, where they thought it was about the flag? Because I was in a number of those conversations as well, where people didn't want to hear it. They're more woke now, but back then they didn't want to hear it.
Well, I mean, all you can do is speak truth. So you speak truth and then you move on. Some people, they just don't want, again, they don't want to hear it. But you can't unhear truth and you can't unsee light. So once you see light and truth, you're responsible for the light and the truth that you have now been shown and see. So at that point, I just move on because you know the truth. And the truth was so evident though. But I'm just going to be honest, the last 4 years of the country has been so divisive that anything that happened in those 4 years was indicative of leadership. So it's one of those things now that I don't even want Colin Kaepernick to go back into the NFL. I think he's better off with his area in life now and the examples that he's using. The NFL really, really has to be, in some ways, ashamed of himself because they blackballed that young man from getting a job, and there was no reason for it. There was times when you would look at rosters and the quarterbacks that they had on those rosters. You're telling me that Colin Kaepernick wasn't as able-bodied as those individuals just to even compete for a backup role? I'm not buying that. So Roger Goodell, the NFL, they are responsible for all of that. So there's a lot of blame to go around, but at the end of the day, I'm still so proud of the stance that he took because someone had to take it, and he took it. And
you talk about taking a stance. I'm going to mispronounce his name. Soccer player Zlatan Ibrahimovic gave his viewpoint on LeBron James talking politics, and he told him, stick to sports, get out of politics. Reactions to that?
Yeah, I mean, these athletes, again, when Shannon asked me about doing broadcasting the right way, and one of the things is knowing that these athletics is what they do, but it's not who they are. So there are so many athletes that have other callings. Muhammad Ali, the list goes on and on. Muhammad Ali is probably the one that sticks in my mind because of my era.
Yeah.
But LeBron James,
the Bill Russells, the Jim Browns,
right?
Arthur Ashes.
Right. There's so many that have taken stances outside of the sports that they play. Serena Williams has taken stances on things. So it's not up to us, because I know there was times that Why doesn't Tiger Woods take more of a stance on certain things? Or why
Michael
doesn't
Jordan.
Michael Jordan
Yep,
take a
yep.
stance on? You can't tell the individual what stance to take, but you cannot muzzle them to say, okay, all you are is an athlete, right? And we don't want to hear anything else. No, the athletics is a way to get in the door to affect change. And after a while, right, that's going to come out of people who want to affect change. And LeBron James is one of those people, coming from Akron, knowing that, so many things that he touches, people listen. But what you don't see is all the kids that he's putting through college and the millions and millions of dollars that he's put into academies and things like that. That's all because basketball afforded him the platform to do other things in his life. So for any athlete to say to another athlete, just shut up and do what you do, that's not realistic. That's not realistic. We all have multiple gifts inside of us, and what we do as a vocation is not always who we are as individuals. We're so much more.
You're absolutely right. You mentioned the gift.
And people should know that. I mean, there's too many examples. Too many examples of people who have done extraordinary things outside of their 9 to 5.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Speaking of extraordinary, Shannon, what's happening in the chat room?
I'm over here just, again, like I said, getting fed. But you know what, Lou? You are an Emmy Award-winning sports personality. You have your own company, Holder Sports. Let me ask you, how has your faith, family, and friends contributed to that success?
Wow, that's a great question. It's how I'm rooted. I am not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ. I am a true believer that my steps have been ordered by the Lord. I have been put in positions where I can look back, and he will do that. God will do that. He'll put you in a position where you can only look back and say it was only him, because no man could have done what he did. So my trip through school, through Temple University, getting a graduate degree, being a graduate assistant for Jeff Montague at the time when I was there, and just walked on the campus and said, where do I sign up? And he said, you know what? I see something in you. And he said, you're going to be one of my first graduate assistants. And my whole graduate career was paid for before I walked through the door, because I walked on campus and I just handed my resume to the right person. That's not man.
That's not coincidence.
That's not man. So just the way my career has taken off in my personal life and the awards that I've been able to win, I can't claim that. And I promised myself that if I ever got a chance to tell anybody, I was going to tell that person and any other person why I'm here. And I'm only here because of the grace and mercy of my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. So my faith is where I am, and that's who I am. The family and friends have also been ordained by God. My mother told me, you have a lot of acquaintances, but very few friends. So I know a lot of people, but I have very few friends, because I have to really guard myself, because everybody thinks that I am a walking ticket master.
StubHub, brother StubHub.
A StubHub, or whatever you want to call it, and that's not who I am. So a lot of people in my industry are very isolated, because they're afraid of people using them for their advantage. So people that I am friends with are the ones that I grew up in the Philadelphia area, that have known me before I became a sportscaster, and are not in awe of what I do right now. They're like, man, that's just Lou. That's just Lou. Those are the people I want to be around, because I can't fake the funk with them. They knew me when I first picked up a microphone. So that's the kind of, and then people, the Bible says, don't put your hand on anybody suddenly. So that scripture has always resonated with me, because you see people's reaction and you see people's behavior over a period of time, and those are the ones you let into your inner circle, right? And it's only after a long period of time where those people become your friends and your family, and all of those people have the similar walks in Christ that I do. Because you can't be unevenly yoked, not just in marriage, but you can't be unevenly yoked in friendships and anywhere else, because it will come a point where you're going to have to make a decision that is not very popular. And if you are dealing with people that are not like-minded as you, it's going to cause you more pain and more heartache when you have to make those stances. So that's kind of the roundabout answer to how does my family, my friends, and most importantly, my faith play in my life.
Amen.
Thank you, Shannon. Phenomenal question. Thank you. Lou, my research, my doctorate was on authenticity. People being authentic, primarily authentic at work. I've always wanted to ask someone in your industry, so I get a chance to ask you this. Does the press, does the public really want that athlete to be authentic when they're answering the question? And I asked before, I remember when LeBron James and the Heat lost to Dallas in the championship. They were interviewing LeBron after the game, and they said, how do you feel? What's going on? He's like, listen, y'all going back to y'all 9 to 5s. I'm going home to my big mansion, my house. And it was still tender. The wound was tender, but that's just an example. Does the public, do the people in your industry, do you want these athletes to come down Front Street and share their truth? Or do you want them to share some of it?
I would rather them be truthful and authentic. And I also realize that people are in different maturity levels in sports. The same words that are spoken by LeBron James are the same words that are not spoken by Bill Belichick in a press conference, but they're both authentic in their own ways. That's how Bill feels. And everybody in that market knows that when you're interviewing Bill Belichick, you're going to get the prickly answers. If you are interviewing San Antonio Spurs and you're interviewing Popovich, you're going to get the same thing. But then if you interview Gino Auriemma and the UConn Huskies, you're going to get a lot different answer. But authentic is what you want. And sometimes it's in your face and you don't always agree with it. But I'd rather have somebody be telling me a real answer than a rehearsed and fake answer, because at the end of the day, people are going to see through that. And educated fan bases in sports can see that. Case in point, when it was in Philly, I remember when Ricky Waters.
For who, for what?
Yeah, for who, for what,
Yeah.
right? He was authentic, but
Yes.
the thing about it is, though, his authentic revealed something about his character that was not Philly, right? But if he didn't say that, we would never know all along that he had a selfish attitude towards his teammates. So I'm glad when people reveal themselves in authentic, because now the public has an opportunity to make a true decision on, I like that person or I don't like that person. Allen Iverson, we're talking about practice. Not the game. Not the game. We're talking about practice. And at the end of the day, his authenticity was really, really profound, because they kept hounding him about practices, but this man showed up every day for the game. Why are we really worried about practice, right? Well, you have a bunch of people who say, you know what? I'm teaching my kids that practice is very important before you get to the game. So you're a role model and you're supposed to be doing that. Where others are saying, man, this man has earned so much respect playing hurt, playing undersized and everything like that. But if he never said that, we wouldn't have anywhere to go. If there was just the whole rehearsed answer, then we never would know where to go. So I'm for the athlete being authentic. The shock value, that's for everybody else to deal with, but the athlete being authentic, I don't know how you can really, really have an issue with that.
Lou, here's an opportunity for you to continue that. school of thought. At this juncture on the show, we always ask the guests, since I'm a speaker, to do a mini keynote, MINI, where you have 30 seconds to look into the camera and whatever your call to action is, empowerment, resiliency, pivoting. So considering your life, your experiences, your profession, I want you to look in that camera. I know you're a speaker. Give us 30 seconds on Lou Holder, Unplugged, and your admonition to us.
Mm-hmm. As Lou Holder, a sportscaster, I will say that life is a journey, and don't be afraid to embrace all the turns and all the nuances that this journey gives you. I am not doing right now what I thought I'd be doing when I was 18, 19 years old, and that's okay. That's okay. You are supposed to be finding out as you go through life what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Don't get discouraged. Understand that there are going to be tests, but without tests, there would be no testimonies. So the tests are going to come from inside of your vocation, outside of your vocation, on an everyday basis, and a lot of times through the people that you love, the tests will come. But at the end of the day, we are equipped for the journey that God has put us on. We are here for a reason. And at the end of the day, let the words of our mouth and the meditation of our hearts still be acceptable in His sight, our Lord and our Redeemer. Amen.
Boom, boom. Man, we could be here all day. I wanted to talk to you about nephew Tommy. I want to talk about Mike.
Let's go into overtime. Let's go into overtime. Has the Dr. James show ever gone into overtime?
We go into overtime right now. Let's look at a video clip of you interviewing nephew Tommy. It's coming. We set it up.
So I want to at least start there by taking us through your journey with some of these segments of the media that you have excelled in. I want to start with the radio first. Okay. Obviously, for everybody who knows or does not know, it's Nephew Tommy. Nephew Tommy being the nephew of Steve Harvey, the famous comedian. So first, I think we need to start there. How influential was your uncle in everything that you've done?
A lot. I mean, you got a guy that, shot like a rocket as far as stand-up comedy, and you just sit back and watch, you take notes, you see what he's doing, and you learn the good part, you learn the bad part, you wrap it all up, and you say, okay, let me give it a shot. Mm-hmm. And stand-up comedy, I have no idea. I was working in the summertime with a buddy that had a lawn service, and we were cutting yards, and he says, man, you ought to go try some stand-up comedy. I was like, no, I'm an actor. I'm a thespian, And he said, no, you ought to give it a shot. They had an amateur night in my city, Houston, Texas. And I said, all right, let's try it. So I go down, I do 3 to 5 minutes, which I thought was forever, and I won. I called my uncle and said, I won. And then, of course, he said, you still ain't ready. You ain't ready yet.
What was that like, Lou? We're in overtime now, a minute or two of overtime. What was that like?
Oh, it was great. I mean, he came to the campus one of the campuses that I teach, Prince George's Community College in Largo, Maryland. And we just had a real talk about all the things that he's doing. And again, he's more than just a comedian. He's more than just that. His miles for giving and how he gives back to military people and things of that nature. There's so many things about him that was just fascinating to me, how he studies Shakespeare and how he's doing so many things and who he likes as a comedian. And besides his uncle, he said that Bernie Mac and Cedric the Entertainer, but obviously the GOAT for him and most of us is Richard Pryor. So he went through a lot of that. And then he just gave the students that were in the audience that day, he gave them some marching orders, some tips for life. And he said, be prepared, be ready for the long haul, And his last words in that interview were, "Don't forget about God.
Don't forget about God.
It always comes back. It always comes back to the Creator."
Yes, yes. Shannon, you come on out. Lou, I'm gonna ask you the same question you asked Chadwick. And hopefully you won't say, I can't tell you. What's next for you? What's next? What's next for Lou Holder?
I'm just expanding on what I'm doing. I mean, I love telling stories, Dr. James and Shannon. I love telling stories. So whatever's going to give me the platform to do that, whether it's teaching as I'm doing now and continuing to teach, whether I'm invited to be on shows like yours, whether I do a podcast of my own, whether I get back into television full time, whether I have my own radio show, whatever God has in store for me, that's what's next for me. You know, I really can't. I'm through. I'm tired, and I'm through of putting God in a box. Right? I'm tired because He keeps blowing my mind and sustaining me in ways that I never thought that I would. So at this time, I'm like, whatever you want me to do, Lord, because when I start making, that's how you make God laugh. You have a plan, right? That's how you make him laugh, so I'm tired of making God laugh. I'm like, you order my steps and tell me what I'm supposed to do, what shows I'm supposed to be on, what format, what platform you want me to have. And that is my honest answer on what's next for me. Whatever God has in store for me is what's next for me.
I love it. I love it. Shannon, this is our first overtime show. Any concluding thoughts?
Well, I can see how having a conversation with Lou is so easy, and you're just, it's a conversation and you make people feel so relaxed. So thank you for sharing your heart today. I felt your integrity, your character, and I believe the world really feels your ability to connect with people and make them feel as if they're the only person on the planet. I don't even know who's watching and listening today, because you draw us in. And I thank you for sharing that today, because I really felt your authenticity.
I appreciate that. And Dr. James, I thank you for having me on. And but before I leave, I have to shout out the organization that also helped change my life, and that's the Inroads organization. So from your brother Rodney to Mike Robinson, who's the reason why I pledged Kappa Alpha Psi, to Bill Hart, to Debbie Hill, to Coulter, to so many people. I've been good friends with Ricardo and Salika Michelle, who I have met through Inroads, and they live right down the street from me now here. We've run into each other and we're raising kids together, and the Inroads, community and the Inroads family is tight-knit. And it taught me business acumen. It taught me being on time. It taught me so many things that have served me. Now, obviously, they didn't have broadcasting as part of a corporate sponsor. It was more medicine and banking and things of that nature. But the actual nuances that I learned from being a business professional from that organization has served me well in life. It served me well in life. So not only did I got my sports start in the Philadelphia area, I got my business start in the Philadelphia area. And obviously my dad signed me up for the thing. I didn't know anything about Inroads. I was like, whatever. My dad had me in Boy Scouting. I'm an Eagle Boy Scout. He had me doing all these things. And I'm just like, okay, Dad, whatever you want me to do, because I'm not going to say no. But when I got in there and I had my first taste of Inroads, I was like, these people are sharp. They dressing nice. The first thing they taught us was phone etiquette. And that's when they didn't have cell phones. You had to pick up a phone, dial an employer, talk to them, go on an interview. After the interview, write a thank you letter, mail the letter off. They don't do any of that now. Now it's all, online. My kids right now, they never see them. They never see them now. You apply online and you are rejected online. But I was like,
It's a
I
new
keep
day.
telling my kids, sooner or later, you are going to run into a human being and you got to know how to handshake somebody. Can't be too soft. It can't be too firm. For men and women, you got to know how to look people in the eye. All this stuff that Inroads taught me that now I'm actually teaching others. And it was before I even knew what I was doing that they ingrained into me what it is to be a strong Black man in corporate America and succeeding when a lot of the stuff that will make you has nothing to do with your knowledge of the product or whatever. It's the soft skills of understanding how to deal with people. That
I
has
call them the people skills, because
right,
dealing with people is not
exactly. And
so.
not everybody can deal with people.
No.
No.
Not
And
everybody
Dr.
can deal with.
James, I think we need to have Lou back if we have some folks on from Inroads.
Oh, we're going to do an Inroad show. How about that? We're going to do an Inroad show.
We'll never finish that show. That show will never finish.
We're going to do it. Great idea. Lou Holder, thank you. I think if Salt and Pepper were here right now, they would say, what a man, what a man, what a mighty good man. Lou, you're the truth. Thank you for blessing our show today. Thank you for bringing your wisdom, your experiences, your authenticity. We're so grateful to have you. And for those of you who are watching, thank you for staying overtime. It was worth it. Lou Holder brought you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And I always end the show by saying, you were just impacted.